Good afternoon. Good evening. We're here again. It's episode 2. We were not canned. We're still here. So we have made it. Once again, I am Rob Horton.
And I'm Coach Lisa.
And
today we have a special guest.
We have a special guest.
But we'll get to him in a
moment.
We're
going to get to him in a moment. Yeah. Because there's been a couple changes since the last time we saw each other in episode 1. Number 1, unintentionally, we're both wearing black. Number 2, we're in the same room. That's because of technology. We're improving on that. Yes. Don't worry. And thirdly, and probably the most importantly, we're in my classroom here on the second floor at Diamond. And Coach Lisa has informed me that we have to have a new mascot. So our mascot is actually now right behind us. And we have a good old dog. And just in case you want to know, this dog actually came from one of my students in 7th Bell, who said, and I quote, "This is your class mascot this year." And I said, "You got it." So that we don't get, a strike from YouTube or whatnot, I'm not going to push the button. But does he play the Macarena? Yes, he does. So exactly.
Yep.
Yes.
So surely I will not get, called out on the copyright because I don't sing it well enough.
The actual song might, though.
Right. Yes.
We're young and we don't want to get, canned from that reason.
Right.
We'll let our district make that decision for us,
yes.
not the YouTube.
Yes,
don't you
that. Very good.
But we have a special guest. We are in the presence of
greatness.
Yes. I think that's the word I would use.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it greatness. Yeah.
Well, we're calling it greatness. I would say head honcho of the building. That's the way I would go. But we are in the presence of our fearless leader.
Yes, I like that.
Our fearless leader.
Our
fearless leader.
Yeah. Otherwise known as the Dean of Instruction.
Yes. So for those of you who do not know, we actually have a Dean of Instruction, our head dean, followed by 2 assistant deans. Our 2 assistant deans, Jenny Atkins and Joe Russell. Hopefully we can get them on our podcast soon. Especially if we get Miss Atkins on the show, we can probably have a podcast that goes for an hour and a half.
Yes.
But
and
she will rap for us.
Absolutely. She'll do some Beastie Boy.
She will.
Yeah. She will absolutely indeed. But we have the head dean of instruction with us today, Mr. Scott Colliflower, and we are very excited to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be on the show.
Well, we're happy to have you for episode 2. Mainly, our big gist for today is 1, to get to know you, 2, how you got here, and 3, what Diamond Oaks means to you. Because you've been here for a little bit, and you have definitely seen how this building has evolved over time. But before we really get into that, floor is yours. Please give us the background of your career, how you got here, and how on earth you got to Dean of Instruction, which you absolutely deserved.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My long educational career, I feel like it's long. There's people who have definitely a lot longer careers in education, but I taught 13 years as a social studies teacher in Middletown High School. And then from there went into administration, and it was largely the encouragement of the principal at the time, Carmela Cotter. She was really a mentor to me, and pushed me in a direction. And honestly, I didn't see myself going into administration, but she thought it was a good idea. So I took her advice, and then after Middletown, my first administrative gig was in New Miami. And then ended up here with the Oaks. And then I was assistant principal at Scarlet Oaks, probably I think 4 years. And then I think I have been here 4 years total at Diamond Oaks, 4 years. So
nice.
It's been a good ride, very good ride.
So given the fact that you really didn't see yourself being an admin originally, what has been your biggest surprise about being an admin that maybe you didn't expect?
I think honestly that when I first was hesitant to take the admin chair, if you will, I heard a lot of negativity about what the job would entail. And believe me, there some definite downsides in terms of discipline. That's one of the things that administrators hate. It just goes along with the job. But what I found is there's a lot of good that can come out of the position just because you're able to tie in a lot of resources to help kids, to help teachers. And that's the most enjoyable part about the job. So, kind of defeating that mindset of going into administration, believe me, it was going to be mostly discipline with very little opportunity to engage positively with students and with staff. And finding out, yes, you can. You can indeed. And it feels good, those instances where you can help students and help staff. So that was the most beneficial surprise.
Wonderful. So if I heard correctly, you were in a traditional public school before coming to the Oaks. What drew you to the career tech side?
Um, and I'm going to make a confession, and maybe I shouldn't make a confession. So when I first started education, I was under, I'm just going to call it the old mindset that everyone needs to go to college, right? That the whole purpose of education was to prepare kids for college. And I started off like gung ho in Middletown, like, that just kind of like the altruistic. I was going to help everybody. That's exactly where everybody was going to go. And what I quickly found out was there was a large portion of my students and with the families I met that just weren't being served by that mentality. And it was really bothersome because either A, they didn't have the financial resources, regardless of what scholarships they could earn. B, they just weren't interested in going to college. They were interested in, just going straight into work. And C, maybe they just didn't know. They just didn't know what they wanted to do. And so that mindset I started out with, it took me a while, but that mindset I started out with was like, man, this is, it didn't feel right, especially with some of the content, some of the advanced content that I ended up teaching. There was a large portion of the student body that wasn't served. And so at that time, Middletown, and they still do, partner with Butler Tech. And again, at first, I was kind of, suspicious of Butler Tech, drawing students away from that whole mission of being college, bound.
Mhm.
But as I became more and more familiar, and then when students would come back, they would just, number one, they'd be in uniform, but the amount of pride they exuded just from being at Butler Tech and then, you know, talking to me, because a lot of times I would have kids as sophomores. So they would come back to me as juniors and just, talk about everything they were learning and just the amount of hope they had where the traditional school didn't really provide them. And so that's where I really began to look at it and or appreciate it, shall we say. But it really wasn't until after I went into administration that I was given the opportunity to even get involved with career tech. And that is where a person I used to teach with and a friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to at the time for a long time, Dan Rush, who's now the director of student services. I actually had a conversation with him, and it was kind of like off the cuff, like weird interaction. And he's like, "Have you
With
ever thought
Dan?
about?" Well, it
Weird?
was just
Never.
because it wasn't planned, and it was like, we met at an engagement, and his question to me was, "Have you ever considered career tech?" And then we started talking because he taught at Middletown along with me. And I said, well, I have, you know, but just never really had the opportunity. And then it was like, well, we just so happen to have several assistant principal positions open. Maybe you should come and interview for them. So that's what kicked off the whole engagement in the career tech. And I haven't
Okay.
looked back. Of course, everybody needs a job, right? But if it were up to me, I wouldn't go anywhere other than career tech. I think this the, my experience with career tech is number one, it's a school of second chances, right? Meaning that a lot of students come here, they may not have been successful for whatever reason in their traditional school. So this is kind of their opportunity, the last 2 years of school to succeed where they may not have experienced success before. But it's also a way to serve that population where They know they're not necessarily college bound, but they want to get into a career. And then even we've expanded our mission to include, for instance, digital arts, IT academy, where they will be college bound. A lot of them will be college bound. And so just giving them a leg up. My son, for instance, went to Warren County Career Tech and he took their digital arts class. And so he's right now in Bowling Green, but he had a leg up on a lot of people who just didn't know because they didn't go the career tech route. So he was able to do a lot of programming, do a lot of the print media that a lot of students just didn't have exposure to. So it's I find career tech just amazing in terms of the multifaceted approach and how it engages students. So
Yeah, so you hit on something that we actually hit in that first episode, coming from different generations, obviously, but that
Mhm.
same concept that we went to, school at a time, or I went to school at a time when not only was the teaching mindset of we are getting people ready for college, but the student mindset was you either go to college or you don't,
Right.
right? You either go to college or you're worthless, which is absolutely incorrect, as as you had mentioned.
Hmm.
And it all goes along with what our HR director, Kevin Apt, has been talking about
Hmm.
recently. He was on a podcast recently where he spoke about the three E's. So, of course, we've got the enrollment, right, for those
Hmm.
who want to go to college. We've got the employment for those who want to go on to, have a career. And then we've got the enlistment for those who want to go on to the military.
Right.
And I know that I have found that career tech really handles and supports all three of those options very well
Hmm.
compared to a traditional high school setting.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
How many times do we talk to students, both current and graduated,
Mhm.
that talk about their experiences being at a career tech school, and then they leave, they find themselves a job, they come back and they say, if it wasn't for my career tech school, I don't know
Right.
where I would be
Yes.
today.
Exactly.
And that's critical. That doesn't
Hmm.
just come down to the academics, it also comes down to the lab instructors and also all those in the front office as well, because we're pushing them. Like you said, it's a school of second chances, right?
Hmm.
We have a lot of learners here that are hands-on learners. We have
Yes.
some that, of course, book smart. There is certainly
Hmm.
nothing wrong with book smart, but we
Hmm.
have a lot of hands-on learners, and it's how do we unlock that type of
Yes.
skill set
Yes.
in their
Hmm.
classroom, both lab
Right.
and academic, which doesn't mean it's not always 100%,
Right.
but we're recognizing it and making that step, which is critical. So I got two questions for you, kind of continuing on that realm. So being in a teacher for 13 years and then moving on to administration, what would you say? Part one of the question is, what would you say was the biggest difficulty or struggle or maybe transitional
Yeah.
moment from going from a teacher to an admin? What was the same? What was different? Where did you see the craziness in there?
So as I reflect on your question, honestly, it's probably the illusion of control, the loss of. How's that? That's like kind of deep, isn't it? So, when you're a teacher, there, it, and you both know that you're in front of a class, and it's kind of like how many ever bells you have. So you put on 8 one-act plays, right? And so, like, it
Mhm.
does not matter what your day is like. You're engaged. You have a job to do. You're there for the students, etc. Right? But you control those 8 1 hour, if you will, 45 to 1 hour periods of the day, right? So you feel like you have a handle because you have a set time and you control, even though control is an illusion. You control that period of time. You have a schedule, you have lesson plans, you have classroom management, positive interactions, and so on, right? And there's some things that happen that aren't necessarily in your control, but they're minimal, I would just from my memory, right? Um,
Mhm.
Whereas the move to administration, it's the now you're kind of given a larger chunk of that. And it's almost like it's, where people are like, oh, you're the big boss now, or whatever. It's actually kind of the feeling of like the loss of control, because now there's all these different factors that come into play, and you've got the human element, right, which involves the student, the teachers, the parents. And so, yeah, the difficulty, I think, when you first get in administration is just accepting the fact that you you may not have as much control as you think you did. All right, in fact, you have less, and your job really is to kind of to is a series of compromises and trying to do ultimately what's best for the student, and being able to communicate that with staff, with parents, and so on. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. Does that make sense,
Oh,
just from my
that
perspective?
that's a
Great.
great answer, and that's just part one of what I got. Part two, which is funny because you kind of looked at it from the student perspective of it all.
Hmm.
So now I'm going to look at the staff side real quick because I think this is
Hmm.
kind of fun. So real fun story. So you just mentioned Dan Rush, and
Hmm.
we got to shout out Dan Rush real quick. Dan Rush was our previous dean, our head dean, who's just now moved on to district office over, next door to Scarlett.
Right, right.
And we had a job opening, and you had taken that leap from assistant dean to head dean, right? And I can't remember now when during the year it was, but I do remember that in the spring when it was announced that you were taking over for Dan's position, it was a staff meeting, and yes, I'm embarrassing you. I do not care, but we got these. We got
you,
these
you,
as our
oh
official announcement
Lord,
of celebration
yeah.
that you were getting the head dean position. So you've had the summer. You've had the first, I think we're now what, 7 weeks into school
Something
now.
like that. Yeah.
Something like
Very
that.
That's
close.
We
amazing.
still
It's
have
flown.
it's
Hmm.
it's
Yes.
flown by. It has.
Hmm.
We still have months to go until
Right.
next summer, but no one's counting, obviously. But since your transition from assistant dean to head dean, and we had a lot of summer projects happening here at the building over the
Mhm.
summer. We had, staff coming back.
Hmm.
We've had classes that are, brand new students. We have, was it 450 brand new students this
Hmm.
year.
Right.
So for you, what has that transition been going from assistant to head dean? What have you seen that has been similar or different? And then do you feel like that there's any new issues that you have to, address, or maybe new positives that you've seen now being in that position that you're in?
So, yes. So it's akin to when you're moving from assistant to head. It's kind of like, yeah, moving from teacher to assistant, right? It's the idea that you have the feeling of you have a little bit more control over your 8 bells a day, right? And even again, teachers, they have definitely in those 8 bells, there are instances where they experience some hardship for sure. But moving from assistant, where you're assigned certain programs and certain students to monitor and watch, now kind of like when you're in this position, it's like the whole enchilada, right? The whole building, then along with whatever the assistant deans they cover. So having that sense, and it is quite, you feel it as a head dean, you feel the responsibility and the weight, that because all of the students in this building, all the teachers are effectively mine, per se. You know what I mean? Meaning that I am responsible. Their well-being is my well-being. And
Yes.
so having that weight is quite tremendous. And honestly, it's like I still haven't gotten to the point where I'm like I can sleep good at night, because I think about a lot of things during the day, like how do we make this better? This isn't working out. How do we do this? How do we approach that? And it's kind of like a trial by error. Education, and I think you both have heard this, is kind of like flying a plane, and the plane is not stopping for any repairs, so it's like trying to fix things in midair a lot of
Mhm.
times. And we make, as you alluded to, over the summer we made some serious change in plans we thought would be effective. Some of those were good, some of them aren't, so we're having to change them. But again, students are here, teachers are teaching, and so it's a matter of just being able to fix things, tweak things, as we're in flight. And so, yeah, this position is more like, everything is kind of a weight on your shoulders, just because I feel an overwhelming responsibility to everybody, right? Not just, but I will tell you this, though, I have to give props to the staff and to my administrative team. So there are honestly, and this is, no smoke, it is truly the best place to start out as a head dean because the staff here, and I've been to other campuses, and it's a it's not to downplay any other campuses, but I much prefer this campus, this staff, because they care about students. Many more go above and beyond. A good example is this podcast, right? No one told you to do it. You took this on. You thought it was a great idea. It's the kind of stuff that like this staff comes up with. It's just they're willing. So many staff are willing to help students to go the extra mile. And then the talented administrators that I have that are go-getters, that have their qualities to bring. And, I don't have to worry about anybody just not pulling their weight. And so this is a perfect place to start out as head dean. And quite frankly, I would stay here for my whole career. It's how I would love to be. Now the powers that be may want to move me. I don't have any choice in that eventually, hopefully not anytime soon. But this place is very, very special. And again, I've seen some campuses and I'd much rather be here. So
Well, good, because you are segueing right into what I wanted to hit, and that is the positivity of what's going on here at Diamond, because a lot of times people outside don't get to hear all the positives. And so we have to tell our own story, which is where this
Right.
idea came from Mr. Horton in the first place, was how do we get our story told? How can we get the positives out there about the students, the staff, the building, things that we're doing? You mentioned, your admin and your staff, being positives in your day, positives in the building. What are some things that are happening here? What are some highlights that you think the outside world should know about what is good here at Diamond?
Wow. Like how much time do you have? So like
Right? Well, we want viewership to go up, so try not to make
yeah,
it
try
an
to
hour.
that's right. That's right. There
But if
are
you listed it, like give us a couple, and then we can have you back on again to toot the horn a little louder next time.
right. So I think to start off with our programming meets a whole lot of students' needs, wants, desires, right? So to give you an example, we add an additional welding lab. And every year we had this huge waiting list for welding, and welding is a top money maker. It's a skill that a lot of companies need, and students are getting out that are in welding, excuse me, that are just getting out making an awesome wage because of the talent and the skills that they acquire here at Diamond. So we created an additional welding lab and actually hired on a Diamond Oaks graduate
Yes.
to teach that lab, and he is phenomenal. So now we're able to serve twice as many kids that applied for welding as we were able to do. We also have another new lab because there was a need again, an interest in the community for dental. And so we have a new dental lab. And again, those kids getting out the skills and she, by the way, she is also a Diamond, no, not Diamond, I'm sorry, Scarlet Oaks graduate.
Yes.
Yep, Scarlet Oaks graduate. But definitely has you know, had some advantages in terms of going through the Great Oak system and has gotten the skills and so on that she's able to transmit to her students. So Ms. Howard is just an awesome instructor. She has been in the field and has been cares for her students a lot. So, the programming I think is there. That now granted we are also bringing in aviation exploration. So we have aviation maintenance, but there's also aviation exploration, which kind of serves students who may not know if they want to go into the maintenance portion or they want to go into piloting and so on. So we're bringing that on. That's going to be next year. So again, kind of increasing programming, trying to respond to the community's needs. I think also we're working hard to kind of bring back to make sure that we focus on the positives. So Sparkle Awards, which She has definitely helped me with.
Both of you on that.
No,
Both-
he reignited
you
it.
you created the
But
form.
she made it possible.
I just
Coach
used
Lisa made it
Canva to make it
possible.
pretty.
She definitely did. And again, that there goes the staff. So you have an idea and the staff take it and just run with it. So it's what I mean? It's just a crazy, it's just awesome. It's just a good place to be.
Yes.
But being able to recognize staff and students for going the extra mile, because a lot of times, having, going back to a previous comment, the teachers do awesome things. They go above and beyond, but a lot of times they're not recognized for it, right? And I think just a little sliver that maybe would help them move on or keep going, if you will, is just, hey, we see that you're doing great. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. And kind of, oh, okay, well, somebody did notice. I feel good about that. And the same thing goes for students, right? Just going above and beyond and tying it to the next ready skills, right? And that's what we are here. It's what we're about at Great Oaks, but in Diamond Oaks is getting students for that next chapter in life, right? Whether it be college or career, but the five pillars that students can exhibit in those Sparkle Awards and that they're actually explicitly taught in class, just to get them ready to know that they're on the right track. So I think recognition is definitely kind of taken off here. Um, and I think the overall, and again, I don't want to go too long. I think the overall positivity that that the lab instructors, along with the academic instructors, exude, model for students is like prime here. And I think you feel it. I feel it when I walk into classrooms, walk out of classrooms, looking at what students are doing. So there's so much happening, and it's so lab specific. And then even with the academic subject specific, that I feel like students are getting a very balanced, rigorous curriculum, and that is getting them ready for the next step in life. So those are just a few.
Yeah. Now I have one final question.
Okay.
Do you have any more?
I'm good.
Okay.
You've been going for it. Go for it more.
Okay, I just have one final question. Is there anything in your mind that the outside world might not know about Diamond that they really need to know?
What people may not know is that each particular lab program that we push for work-based learning from the start to the finish. And in fact, that's kind of part of our state report card, if you will. But Great Oaks has kind of taken it and run with it. And so what we try to do is provide students here with an authentic experience. And whether that is actually out in the field, which is a little easier for our high bays, like with electric, with our auto mechanics or welding, an authentic experience, basically they show up to the job site, they get a lot of learning from actual contractors and so on. But also we try to help those students um, who may not traditionally just be able to walk into a career, right? Where they need some additional training outside of this. So I'm thinking IT Academy, I'm thinking digital arts and design, also providing them with some authentic work experience, whether that be actually designing something from a business advisory member, if you will, that wants a particular logo, or being able to write a series of codes for somebody who's hey, do you think your kids can work on this and get this together? So it's not just theoretical here. I think a lot of times what the public or outside of these walls don't know is that we really focus on trying to provide something that's authentic for students, regardless of what program they're in, so that again, next ready, when they walk across the stage, they will have in some capacity an experience that prepares them for that next step in life, whatever career they choose. So I think that's important for the public to know.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us for episode 2. We're so happy.
It has been awesome as always. Anytime you have a conversation with Mr. Colliflower, he is always enlightening. Sometimes you might have to make it, like a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has to be an hour. It doesn't matter. You're always going to get something.
And it's usually
And-
me who makes it an hour. Like,
And that's fine. That's fine. But that goes to how personable you are, and that's why we love it, and that's why you being the new face of our building. I know that, I speak for a lot of the staff here. You gave us all of our flowers. We got to give you all your flowers as well, because you have done a lot for us, and it's been, a pretty smooth ride, as smooth as it can be for the first, month and change of school. And I know that you got our backs, and that's all we can, we really ask for. So, we've been
Really
really
appreciate
appreciative.
it.
Absolutely.
And
It's
for
very
you
easy for a
also-
talented staff. It's very, very easy because I know everybody's trying their best and doing a good job. So, and I really thank you for letting me be a part of this, the podcast. And this is an awesome thing you guys are putting together.
Absolutely.
Don't worry, we'll make sure that we get you back on here a second time at some point. We'll figure it out when. But as our last little
And we'll all,
Yeah, if you start to see ratings fall or like downloads,
nah,
you
that's
may
just
want to
not gonna
reconsider.
happen. That's not gonna happen. Our last little call to action to all of our students one more time. Again, you will see the same QR code pop up on the screen once again. Similar to our first episode, we were able to get already 15 students signed up for future podcasters who would love to be on our show, and that is phenomenal. But I do know, and Coach Lisa and I can attest, we've got at least another 10 or 15 that have said you want to be a part of it, but you haven't filled out the form yet.
Yes.
So the best way for us to know that you are interested is by filling out the QR code that is right here, so that you can register and you can get yourself involved in our show, whether it's as a special guest like Mr. Colliflower or whether it's behind the scenes. We need all of you, because again, this is your podcast. So we are hopeful that we can continue to build this. Eventually we'll get a studio all set up. We got a little bit of time until then, but we're
Yeah.
working on that.
yeah, right now, what you see is what we got.
And that's okay.
So we need more than that
And that's okay.
for the long term.
And our next thing before episode 3 that we need to know a name. Oh, there's Miss Atkins. There's Miss Atkins. We need to know.
Video bomb. There we go.
We
Can you
need to
edit
know a
that one
name
out?
for our mascot here. That's what we need. So make sure you let us know, whether it be here at Diamond or in an email or something, and we will figure out a name. But Mr. Colliflower, it has been an absolute honor once again. Thank you so much for being with us. And we will be back for episode 3 in the near future.
Yes.
Excited about that.
Yes.
One thing I did not say lastly, that's also a change. She cut her hair.
Oh, stop. Throwing shade on Coach
We're
Lisa.
not
just
throwing shade.
at Mr. Cauliflower.
Well, there was no shade. I'm just saying, you cut your hair. It
I
looked
did.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that earlier.
Yeah.
So,
As Mr. Ross said, I have lost more buoyancy.
Dive lingo right there. Dive lingo. Yep.
dive lingo.
Yep.
And this is how we're ending the podcast. So,
Right.
thank you all for watching episode 2. We will be back with episode 3 with our next guest star. Who that will be, you'll just have to come back and find out. Coach Lisa,
Great.
been a blast as always.
Yes. Good job.
Yay.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Horton and Coach Lisa. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.